Again, I'm Mike Balkwell. I work with the Wellington Water Watchers. The Wellington Water Watchers has opposed water bottling in our community for more than a decade. And for more than a decade, that fight was against Nestle. And Nestle recently sold their North American operations to Blue Triton. We continue to oppose their water bottling. We continue to oppose it in solidarity with Six Nations and their claims. And later you'll be hearing from Makasa Looking Horse from Six Nations. You're probably familiar with the phrase, think globally, act locally. And over the past few years, we've been lucky and able to connect with people in other communities in other parts of the world who are fighting water bottling. And their fight is our fight, and our fight is their fight, because water is for life, not for profit. When Nestle sold their operations to Blue Triton, we connected with groups in North America in communities where Blue Triton now operates at water bottling. We call ourselves informally the Troubled Waters Coalition. And during that work, we met Samantha Demby, who's going to be the moderator for the program today. Sam will introduce herself and give background to herself, but I want to say that Sam, how we came to know Sam is she did the research into Blue Triton for the Troubled Waters Coalition. Sam is based in Mexico, as she will tell you, and she met people from Pueblos Unidos, and we started talking about that. And so we thought it would be appropriate to have this webinar today in solidarity with the people with Pueblos Unidos. And there will be an opportunity for you to make a donation to their work. We will be posting a link in the chat box. I'll be bringing it to your attention a couple more times over the course of the meeting. And when they tell their story, you can see what difference a donation to their campaign will make. We're very pleased to have a couple of other speakers, Don Neptune Adams from the Penobscot Nation in the state now called Maine, and Makasa Looking Horse from Six Nations. And I just want to say maybe one more thing. Part of the reason why the Water Watchers is doing this, in Canada, there's a new federal statutory holiday called National Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is September 29th. And the first recognition of that holiday is this year. So the Water Watchers in September is amplifying several issues and several struggles, Indigenous people's access and right to clean drinking water and to have their land and water rights fulfilled under obligations, which sadly are not fulfilled in many instances. So we're very pleased that this webinar is part of that program of activities in September. Having said that, I'll see you at the end for some closing comments. I may participate a little bit in the middle with the discussion as well, but I'm very pleased now to ask Samantha Demby to come to the virtual stage and provide some background and introduction. And we're so glad you're here, Sam. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mike. Before I get started, I just wanted to do a quick check-in in Spanish with folks. I know some people are having trouble connecting to the translation channel, so I'm going to switch over to Spanish really quick. Buenas tardes a todos. Solo quería ver si las personas que están sintonizando en español, si se pudieran conectar a los canales de traducción. Si les está costando trabajo, por favor, escríbanos en el chat y ahí vamos resolviendo las dudas para ayudarles a conectar. Bueno, ahí dicen que sí se pudo. Muy bien. All right, so I'm going to continue in English. Thanks so much, Mike, for that introduction. My name is Samantha Demby, and I am joining you today from Zapotec territory in Oaxaca, Mexico, which is where I live, and I also conduct research, write about, and organize around environmental issues and natural resource extraction in the Americas. As Mike mentioned, this year I began collaborating with Wellington Water Watchers and other community groups to investigate Nestle's bottled water operations and the sale of Nestle's bottled water business to Wall Street investors. And I'm currently working with a group to investigate the French company Danone, which, as you'll hear about from Pueblos Unidos, from Nahua communities in Mexico, have been very negatively impacted by their bottled water business. All of the communities that I've been working with and that are presenting today in this webinar are experiencing the impacts of the bottled water industry firsthand. Many of us know these impacts include depleted groundwater, the loss of biodiversity, environmental contamination, massive amounts of plastic waste, as well as the theft of public water only to sell it back to our communities at discriminatory prices. And today I'm very honored to participate in this forum that's centering the voices of Indigenous peoples across the American continent who are organizing to take back their vital water resources from this global industry. So I'll just share a little bit about the agenda, which Mike outlined, and then we'll get started. We'll first zoom in on Mexico, where the Nahua peoples have been struggling for decades to protect their land and water. And this past month, they reappropriated Danone's water bottling plant in order to transform it into a vibrant community center that responds directly to their community's needs. Then we'll go to the lands that are known as the US and Canada, where Don of the Penobscot Nation and Makasa from Six Nations territory will help us draw out some parallels to their own people's struggles to protect groundwater, in particular from Nestle's, from the bottled water operations that were formerly owned by Nestle. So the aim today is really to connect these different struggles for water and to generate conversations between movements and amongst all of us present. So in that regard, I encourage you all to write your questions for our speakers in the chat box. And these, I'll pose those to our speakers at the end of each presentation. And at the end of all of the three speakers, after we hear first from Pueblos Unidos, then from Don, and then from Makasa, we'll open up the discussion so that we can share our experiences and our hopes and ideas for the future. In that regard, I'll just leave us with a few questions for collective reflection before handing the microphone over to Pueblos Unidos. What strategies are corporations using today to privatize water and to criminalize water protectors? What forms of resistance and re-existence are our communities employing in order to defend their rivers, springs, lakes, and oceans? And finally, in the face of increasing coordination among public and private, national and transnational actors in the bottled water industry, what kinds and forms of connection across borders have the potential to nourish our water protector movements? With that, without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand the mic over to representatives from Pueblos Unidos. Es mi placer pasar el micrófono a los compas de Pueblos Unidos para que nos pueden contar un poco de su lucha contra Danone, contra Bonafont y sus actividades actuales en la Casa de los Pueblos. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, buenas tardes, compañeros, que nos encontramos en la empresa Bonafont del municipio de Juan Cebonilla.
Bonafont in the outskirts of Puebla, Mexico. From 1955 to until 1985, this territory had a lot of water. 35 sources of water that were serving the human populations in this region. All of that, all the rivers had a lot of flora and fauna. And on the fields, we would find a lot of trees, like fruit trees. There was all life and there was no diseases. The people would not suffer scarcity, be it from grains or fruits. No air was contaminated. All the river was all pure. it was all a paradise. But throughout the years, after 1985 specifically, then a big highway was installed in this region from Mexico to Puebla. And then industrialization process started in this time. Initially with Volkswagen, the German car maker. Then ILSA from Mexico City. Then an airport was installed. In 1992, this enterprise, Bonafont, which was previously called Arcoiris, a different brand of water bottling, and then in 1994, formally Bonafont from Danone was installed in this region. All of this created harm to the environment, and not only to the environment, but to the whole humanity. A lot of animals were extinguished. The flora and the fauna were also extinguished. From our analysis, we see that only 25% of the life that was before living here is living nowadays. From March in this year, we decided to close the water installation, the water bottling plant this year. All of this that we have been doing, we started visiting the different sources of water that were available in the past. And we started seeing that there was a lot of water scarcity, very little water that what was the previous available. And therefore we have seen how much harm and pain and suffering this enterprise has created by the scarcity that they have provoked by their operations in this region. Currently, after closing the installations of the Bonafont, we see that the water is rising back again, and we object decisively this enterprise and these practices that are affecting our communities. We know that our bodies are made 70% of water, and water is such an important part for all living beings in this region and all the living things in this territory. And this is why we share our experience and all of this process that we have gone through, so that the governments and no one else will allow the installation of these transnational enterprises, and so we can oppose this industrial corridor from Ocosingo, which has polluted most of the rivers in the region, and they have made it a complete mess of all the area that we have been living for generations. All the 20 people from this region, all these towns, many of them indigenous, we get together to defend the territory, the water, the environment, for having a life. And this is why we share, this is our testimony, that from 1955 to 1985, these 20 years, 30 years, there, there was a different way of development. And nowadays, capitalism and the government, they collude, and they are creating a completely different model, which is polluting, creating disease, and affecting the workers with a very low salary, extremely low salary, miserable salaries. We don't agree that this that we are taking away one of the most important things for life, which is the water. And that is why we want to carry on this struggle and share with you all that is happening down here in the ex-enterprise, ex-installations of the Bonafont from Danone. And from the 6th of August, we opened the installations, we accessed them with a common agreement, with no leadership, but with an assembly-like organization, with all the 20 different communities that were involved, and we based our decision on the article number 4 of the Constitution of Mexico, that the water is from everyone. The resistance is life, submission is death. Many thanks to all our friends, and thanks for listening to us. We want also to share with you that Bonafont was installed 29 years ago, initially as Arcoiris, a different enterprise that was settled here, and with the help of a lot of families, cheating and with lies, they installed the well, the original well, and then tricking the neighbors, they tried to get the signatures of the different neighbors that were around around this area. Then in 1994, the Bonafont was took over this other enterprise, Arcoiris, and they just took over the original well that Arcoiris was using. And these are industrial wells. They go very deep and they take a lot of water. They take above 1 million liters daily, and this implies a huge reduction on the water availability for the communities around it. This enterprise, we made a judgment against them, and this enterprise, we went first and we said, we installed our demands pacifically, and we said that they should not uh, be against the people of the areas, but then they didn't listen, and therefore we had to join, and therefore we decided to come and close it by our own sort of strength and our own power. And therefore, and the day, in the International Day of the Water, which is the 6th of August or 8th of August, and then we came into the installations, and the government has not listened, and they have not done anything for the communities around here, and therefore that's why we had to we took this decision of coming in here and then this was a longer process that started on the 22nd of March, where we called the media, we invited the media, even the government media, and we called as well associations, and then we made an official trail, a judgment of the businessman, and from the CONAGUA, like, which is the government agency for for water regulation. So that's why we said after this trial that we needed to take these installations to send them away, because there was no one was doing anything. And therefore we decided to change the objective of these installations. We decided to change completely why we do this, and therefore we are making spaces for children, for health, for our families to have um, all these spaces for free, so they don't have to pay, and we put them in service to the communities. And that's why we are gonna share with more with we're gonna share with more detail what was happening. It's also important to mention that us as communities, our reason for living, it's water, is a sacred thing. We need it for life in general and for all living beings. And we see it as a sister, because we have a very strong bondage with it, very strong link with it. And the enterprises will not see it as ever like we do. They just see it as an exploitable sort of material, or something that completely diverges from from the way that we see it and the way that we relate with it. We use it for our crops, we use it for health, we use it for many purposes, for living, for our animals. So when we see that the water that was very available now is no longer there, we we see a complete threat to the life for this region and for us, and that's why we think that it's so important to defend it. On the 22nd, that is the International Day of Water of March, that's when we agreed um, to do the trail for the enterprises, and then we take it on the 6th of August, as Anna mentioned. We invited all the government agencies and the CONAGUA, the environmental and water regulation agencies, and they didn't come, and and that's why we decided to close it down. So they were extracting with no regulation for 29 years, and we thought that we could use this water and other water, that the water would not end up because of the installation. But it was all a trick by these industries and enterprises that were installed here. So they were all along tricking us. And now we are keeping these installations. We do all the kinds of workshops for communities instead of extracting these resources. And now we use the installations with a completely different project. While they extract and exploit and provide death by extracting water, we do the opposite. We give life, and we make workshops like first aid, traditional medicine, um, like metal work, food crops, agriculture, and we had an encounter of women on August, on which a lot of women came and they talked about justice and autonomy. We had another workshop, an encounter of the scientists for life, also on which scientists and different from the academia, from science. They came and to talk about water and to talk about the different struggles that they do from the academia, although their view is a little bit different than ours. But that the way that the people, the indigenous people, the local indigenous people see it, for us is a sacred thing. A well, when it's extracted, um, for us, when we find a well, it's completely different. For us, it's a sacred moment. As soon as a well is found, then we call all the community. We use firecrackers and other things, and everybody comes by. And this first water is sacred, and the whole community joins and enjoys this moment, which is something very precious for the communities. And that's how we communities bond. And it brings us a lot of happiness, a lot of celebrations around it. And then, here the enterprises don't connect with that at all. They just want to make money and exploit the resources, and not us. We have a different relationship, a completely different relationship with it. One way, it's an extractive process, and our view, which is a ceremonial process, a very respectful process. We make an offering when we find a source of water. We make an offering. We bring seeds, and we bring different things as a form of offering. And that's why we consider it so important to defend, to love, to take care of it, and very importantly for this struggle, to respect it. And they have extracted for 29 years, so we had enough of it. We say stop it. It's it's enough that they have been extracting all this water, and that we're being left out of this basic sacred thing for our people. So that's why we say ya basta, which means let's stop it. S- Moving over, so you might have seen through the different media about this thing that happened here. Okay, I think we lost them. Um, they might come back now. Um,
Bueno. All right, so I think let's continue for now. I know there's at least one question from the audience for Pueblos Unidos, and I have a few questions as well. But maybe, I don't know, Mike, Danny, what do you think? Maybe we can continue on with the next speakers, and then when Pueblos Unidos loops back in, we can loop back to them.
And Samantha, I think it's a good idea for us to go to the next presentation. Before we do that, I just wanted to mention that we're encouraging people to make a donation, and we're going to put the donation link in the chat box now. The donation page is in US funds, and those funds will go directly to Pueblos Unidos to support them in the work that they're doing to create a community hub and to do support activities like we're being described there at the end in terms of workshops and outreach to people around food security, et cetera, et cetera. So that we encourage people to make a donation. It's like a telethon. We'll make this announcement again over the course of the meeting. But I'm just wondering if before we change topics, the question there about how did you close the plant? Sam, do you happen to know anything about that? Are you able to speak to that at all? Or should we save that for when they come back?
I can definitely speak to that, but I do think it would be best to let Pueblos Unidos describe themselves how they did it. I know there's a couple of questions from the audience for Pueblos Unidos. I hope as our speakers keep presenting, there's more questions, and I have a few questions too. So let's why don't we continue on to hear from Don Neptune Adams of Penobscot territory, and then when Pueblos Unidos is able to reconnect, we can ask them some questions and take it from there. Don, I'm passing the microphone over to you.
And also just a quick reminder for our speakers that if you're speaking in English, we do have someone that is live translating into Spanish as well. So please remember to speak slowly. Thanks.
Kwe, Endeluizi Don Neptune Adams, Nijiao Banawebskewi, Skijinawe Apit, Aguanu. Buenos dias, me llamo Don Neptune Adams, estoy Penobscot y bienvenido. Hello, my name is Don Neptune Adams. I am from the Penobscot Nation in Penobscot territory. I welcome you and I am honored to be here. First, I'd like to clarify that although I am from the Penobscot Nation, I am not speaking for the Penobscot Nation. I came here as an activist with the Sunlight Media Collective and as a sister to Community Water Justice, who is very much involved with the battle against Blue Triton, formerly known as Nestle, here in Wabanakiyeg, which is now called Maine. I'm going to pause for a second for that translation to go through. I'd also like to, okay, I see that Juan says that he says I can go on. We have struggles here as well, as in other territories. The state of Maine is currently trying to claim ownership of our 60 miles of territory in our river. Back in 2012, the then Attorney General William Schneider sent a memo to the Chief and Council of the Penobscot Nation stating that the water that surrounds the 200 islands in our riverine territory was not part of our reservation, and that if we wanted to challenge them on this, we would have to take them to court. As many of you know, water, and as was spoken earlier, water is precious to us, it's sacred. So we have this clash of worldviews going on between the state of Maine and the indigenous people here. When the state of Maine claims ownership, they are doing so that they can exploit the water, so they can, continue to pollute. And when the Penobscot people say that the water is ours, we are talking about kinship connection, not ownership. Ownership is a colonial construct. It was brought here. It is not indigenous to this land. When we say that the water in the river is ours, we are saying that the water is our relative, not for sale, not for up for grabs to be abused and polluted. Danny, I think there's a map of Penobscot territory that I sent, if you could put that up for us. What you see here are the colonial borders of what is now called Maine, but what we know of as Wabanaki. Wabanaki territory extends beyond these borders, these imaginary lines that were created, just as much of a colonial construct. We are the same. Our struggles are the same. So we have been in a protracted court battle with the state of Maine, and something that is very unusual about Penobscot Nation versus Attorney General Aaron Fry, which is the name of the court case, is that the United States government stepped in as an intervener on the case. They have a trust and treaty responsibility to make sure that our treaties are upheld, and we have treaty reserved rights to the water in our river. In the lower part of that map there, the southwestern part, is Freiburg, and that is where Nestle, now known as Blue Triton, has a 45-year contract to extract water from our territory. That is land that was previously stewarded and taken care of by Penobscot and Abenaki ancestors. A little to the north of there, if you travel up from the Kennebec River, you'll come to a place called Norridgewock, and that is where there was a massacre in 1724 of Abenaki people by the British. Those were the people who had kinship connection to that territory. And now that many of them went to Odanak, the survivors, and some of them came to Penobscot Nation and to Passamaquoddy Nation as well. But that land where Blue Triton is extracting water, that is still stewarded, not owned, but stewarded by the ancestors who are from there. Maliakat is one of them. The place where they drilled the well was one of her favorite spots, and it was where she used to live. I have this unprovable theory that the Nestle trucks that have gone off the road in the winter were pushed off by those ancestors. I wanted to draw parallels from what Pueblos Unidos was saying to the struggles that are going on here. They said that industry exploits, and their connection to the water is sacred as a relative. And for us, it's the same thing. And we see our relatives as sacred. Our next, Sunlight Media Collective's next documentary is called The River is Our Relative, or This River is Our Relative. And it explores the spiritual and kinship connection that we have to the river, not as something that we exploit, but something, someone. And pretty soon, the Penobscot River will have the same rights as our human relatives. Looking forward to that day. Pueblos Unidos said it is so important to defend and respect the water, and I couldn't agree more. We have spent years and years defending the water in Wabanakik, and we will spend the rest of our lives doing so if that's what it takes. I stand in solidarity with you. I am looking forward to hearing how the extraction issues were solved when Pueblos Unidos comes back. In the beginning of Pueblos Unidos conversation, the man said that they were tricked by industries, and that has gone on here as well. When our court case, Penobscot Nation versus Attorney General Janet Mills, began, actually that's one of the attorneys general. There have been 3 since this court case started. We have taken it to court 3 times, and 3 times we have been turned down. But as for the tricking by industries, there were 16 interveners on the case, and each one of them, except for the United States, each one of them was a wastewater site, wastewater processing site, or paper factory, paper mill, or some type of company that made chemicals for paper mills. The Industrial Revolution ruined the water. As a child, I never even touched the Penobscot River, not once that I can remember, because it was so polluted. But people who did swim in the water came out with, skin lesions. The water quality affected even the air, where it was poisonous to breathe that air. And our sustenance fishing rights in the Penobscot River were useless. Our treaty reserve sustenance fishing rights were useless because the fish were too polluted to eat. A lot of our people have died of cancer of the stomach, from eating the fish anyway. As we all know, a lot of Indigenous people are targeted, marginalized, especially socially, economically. Excuse me, I'm getting a little tongue-tied here. To give a little background, places across the river from our reservation often discriminated against Penobscot people. It was hard to get jobs, and we were dependent on the state and federal government for food rations. Some of that cheese was pretty good, though. But in order to survive, a lot of times our relatives caught fish out of the river, even knowing that they were poisoned with paper mill chemicals, and ate those. In 1999, the cancer rate for Penobscot people was 5 times higher than the rest of the state. If you look on that map there, in the middle of what is now called Maine, that's the Penobscot River. I wish I had a pointer so I could point to it. Yeah, there we go. A little lower. Yep, right there. So that is where the Penobscot River is located, from the ocean all the way up to Katahdin. It drains a quarter of the state of Maine, and it is under threat from 2 major sources right now, with a third looming in the background. There is the Juniper Ridge landfill, which is probably the most egregious polluter right now. And that is a huge state-owned, privately run landfill just a mile away from the reservation. It's taking out-of-state trash from states all around the East Coast. And these states have more stringent regulations than what the state of Maine has imposed on the landfill. The private people who run it, who are a private industry, Casella, they say that they really can't exist as a manager and make a profit without bringing in out-of-state trash. But the out-of-state trash that they're bringing in is the worst kind. It's construction, excavation, and demolition debris containing lead, mercury, and a whole bunch of other really bad things. They're taking in wastewater sludge, which contains PFAS, so-called forever chemicals. It's an open air facility, so when it rains, the rain trickles down through this landfill, and toxic soup is collected at the bottom. This is called landfill leachate. So all of those out-of-state, shipments of poison that are dumped right next to our reservation, those poisons are mixed with our sacred water, falling down as rain, trickling down into the bottom, and then what's collected in the bottom is taken just a mile, or actually less than a mile, from the reservation to an inadequate wastewater treatment plant. What they do is they dilute it with river water. Again, our sacred relative is mixed with chemicals. They let the solids float down to the bottom, and they release the diluted water into the Penobscot River, just south of the reservation. Our reservation is an island surrounded on all sides by water. We have the pollution coming from Juniper Ridge to the north of us, and the inadequately treated leachate up to 15 million gallons a year dumped just south of us. The wastewater treatment plant is at 9 Dragons paper mill facility, which is now back online after a time of being offline. The wastewater treatment plant there was never meant for landfill leachate. It was meant for paper mill processing, pulp and paper mill discharge. There are more than 90 chemicals in that water, in the leachate, that they are not testing for. Another threat to our river is to the north, 97.8 miles from Penobscot Nation Reservation. And that is a proposed mining facility at Picket Mountain, so-called Picket Mountain. I don't know the name of it in my own language, but it is next to Katahdin, which means Great Mountain. We also have wastewater discharges all along the river from municipalities. So it's all interrelated and connected, all of these struggles. The state of Maine wants to take ownership of the river so that it can continue to pollute and abuse. We disagree, saying that that is our relative, and we never, ever gave up the right to protect our relative, neither under any treaty nor under the Maine Indian Land Claims Settlement Act. The other industries extracting water and polluting water have seen that the state and industries are getting away with this collaboration between the two of them, and it emboldens them to continue their assaults. I am happy to take any questions. I know there's a lot I didn't cover. I'll think of it all later.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for that very, very informative and moving presentation. So I have a couple of questions here from the audience that I'll share with you, and then we'll try to link back to Pueblos Unidos. So one audience member is asking, how are you and your allies opposing the state trying to take ownership over the Penobscot River?
So the first thing that we did was we made a 44-minute documentary called Penobscot Ancestral River Contested Territory. This was made in 2015, and it was nominated for Best Documentary of 2015 by NEMI, the New England Emmy Awards in Boston. It can be seen at sunlightmediacollective.org. And it gives all of the background. I think the most important thing to do is to educate people on the background, because there's so much to know. People who are in solidarity with us here in Wabanaki, a lot of them remember everything that has happened to reach this point. But there are many others who wish to be in solidarity, who don't know all of the background, and it's much harder for them to articulate the situation when they want to help. So I think education is the first step, and that is what Sunlight Media Collective has focused on.
Great.
Thank you for sharing that movie.
Yeah.
That will also be on MPBN later this fall.
Perfect. Thank you. We have another question, an important question from from Linda, who asks, how did the company manage to get a 45-year contract? That's a very large number of years. Even in the US, most contracts are shorter, especially for water. How did they manage to do that?
Well, if you don't mind, and if the audience doesn't mind, thank you very much for that question, Linda. I'd like to hand the mic over to my sister friend, Nikki Sakara of Community Water Justice.
Hi, everyone. Nestle was able to obtain a 45-year contract that gives them the upper hand of control over our groundwater here in the Western Mountain region of Maine through a contract with a private municipal water company. And our community had no say and cannot object to this because they engaged with a private water company. So we had no voice in this. And we challenged this case in the Maine State Supreme Court, where the judges determined that the Maine Public Utilities Commission that oversees such cases it was not within their purview to consider environmental impacts for contracts, especially of this length. Due to changes in our climate and relatively little scientific information available to the long-term impacts of such bulk water withdrawals, is very irresponsible, short-sighted, and not sustainable. It was a precedent-setting contract in the whole United States, and it gives hedge funders that are working on water futures stability for that market. So it's really, really important that people refuse such long-term contracts, and we're still working at getting this changed at the local level. One thing I do want to say is the local Poland Spring brand of bottled water, you can see we've renamed it and we're calling it Stolen Spring because it reflects what this brand actually is to the community here in Maine. Thank you. Back to you, Don.
Thank you so much, Nikki. That was one of the pictures that I should have sent, was that sticker, Stolen Spring.
Samantha, I think there's just a quick follow-up question on the contract question there in the chat box. Bob asks, can contracts are made with the ability to open them due to negligence? Can that work?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Contracts are made with the ability to open them due to negligence. Can that work?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Maybe we'll leave it as a rhetorical question.
Sure. Unless Nikki has something to add. What do you think, Nikki?
Gosh, that's a good question. I don't have the exact answer to. However, there is, oh gosh, I'm just thinking back to my testimony when I was testifying against this contract. The only thing that's coming to my mind is the duty to protect, but it's not that, because there is something similar, that they have the responsibility to protect our futures in this regard. And there's a legal term for it, and I'm spacing on it right now, but that concept will be brought back around, and we talk about that and in trying to move our government to reconsider such contracts. So we're going to be putting in a bill in this next session to limit any such contracts in the future. And so all of this will be hashed out within, starting next January.
Thank you, Nikki. There was one thing I wanted to mention, and I totally spaced out, but that is that there is a water crisis in Passamaquoddy territory, our cousins to the east, and they currently cannot drink the water out of their tap in Zebayak because it's full of trihalomethane. Their sister reservation at Madakmiguk, which is about an hour north, has proposed drilling and bottling the water there, but many of the grandmothers, Passamaquoddy grandmothers, oppose this because they fear that the infrastructure would be sold off to an industry like Blue Triton or any other.
Great. Thank you so much, Don. I'm just going to reflect one final question from the folks at Pueblos Unidos, and then we'll go on to hear from Makasa Looking Horse so that we have some time for questions at the end. I know Pueblos Unidos is probably going to want to share a little bit more since they got cut off. I know there's some audience questions for Pueblos Unidos as well. Pueblos Unidos, they're interested in understanding how you and other folks from your nation are organizing on the level of the country. So, if there are connections with other groups within the US, how is that kind of community organizing taking place for you all?
Well, gracias para la pregunta. Yo olvidé platicar en español. Well, many of us from the Penobscot Nation went to Standing Rock to stand in solidarity with the people there, where we also shared our struggles and found community together. There are a lot of parallels between struggles across the country. So I don't know about any other water warriors here, but I think that many of us are so focused on survival. We're basically fighting for our lives here, as many people are. A lot of times it can be very isolating. It does help to hear everybody else's story of struggle, and especially the victories that they've had. But when you're treading water, a lot of times we miss out on that. I know I have. I have been very focused since 2011, 2012 on defending the river here. I have a few times taken time out to join other people, first at Standing Rock and later in Somisek, which is located in what is now called South Texas. I joined in with their struggles against fracking and against the wall, which was going to be put through a burial ground. But I think that the more we connect, and the more we share strategy, the more we can rise together.
Thank you so much, Don. I think that is a great note to end on. That's really the whole spirit of this webinar, and which is really, the Spanish word is encuentro, an encounter between different movements and allies. So with that, I want to travel, from the Southern Territory known today as Mexico. We went to the northern part of what's called the US, what's today called Maine, Wabanaki territory. And now we're going to go up further north to what's called Ontario, to the territory of the Six Nations of the Grand River. And we've heard from Pueblos Unidos, we've heard from Don about the Penobscot struggle for water. And I think we've heard that the strategies of the corporations usually relies on lies and on different ways of using the legal and political system through regulatory capture. We've seen that often court cases may be a strategy, but are often used against peoples who are defending their water. And I think we've also heard about many of the creative and resilient ways that folks are fighting to defend their water resources and to create a different way of relating to water. So with that, Makasa, I'd love to pass the microphone on to you so that we can hear how your nation is dealing with these issues and trying to ensure clean water for all of our communities going forward.
Sego, hola. Sego suegego makashinget, genihaganu gohonjode, wagatahuni, Six Nations, Nido Wageno. Hi everybody, my name is Makasha Looking Horse, and I'm Mohawk Wolf Clan, Ginikahaga, and Lakota from Six Nations territory. I am a university student at McMaster University, and I am a community youth leader in my community, and I wear a lot of hats with rites of passage, and I've been on a water research team. We're actually working on a lot of those things that Don has mentioned before with our water being contaminated. That is happening here in Six Nations. We have 5 different mercury, 5 different heavy metals in our tap water that we found through this research that we were not expecting. We are creating a virtual reality. We are tagging turtles, and we're testing the tap water and more households in our Six Nations community to try to resolve all of those contaminants. And that's where I actually learned 3 years ago about what Nestle was doing. And that's where I learned that they were taking 3.6 million liters of aquifer water out of our territory and out of our aquifer from my community that only has 10% of accessible drinking water. I'll share my screen. Yeah, so that's where I learned when on that research team 3 years ago that Nestle was taking out 3.6 million liters of aquifer water out of our territory, and that enraged me because at the same time I was learning that only 9% of my community had access to clean drinking water. And then I was also learning that we had 5 different heavy metals within our tap water. And I was learning all of these things that my community was in. It was clear that they're in a water crisis. And then on a bigger scale, I learned that the whole world, we're on a water crisis, and that it's not just an Indigenous thing that's happening in Canada. It's happening all over. And it's not only Indigenous people that are worried just because we're on the front lines all the time. It's for all of our health, and we're
claramente a nuestra salud. En el mundo solo el 2% del agua es potable, así que todos necesitamos proteger estos cuerpos de agua, ríos o lagos, y esto en cualquier lugar que estemos. Asegurarnos que esta agua está siendo protegida y no esté siendo vendida por corporaciones como Nestlé o Blue Trident, porque ellos solo se roban el agua y ganan dinero con él.
And Blue Trident is kind of a different story than Nestle because it's a stock market. They're selling stocks on the stock market. And so now it's the equivalent commodity compared as the same as oil and logging and all of these other things. And that's not viewed as a human right. It's viewed as a commodity, which is super scary knowing that, like, well, I know that the president or someone who works for Nestle said it himself that water is not a human right. And that's what they truly believe. They truly believe that water is not a human right and that we have to buy water. When water is a human right and we all need water in order to live. And that's why it's so dangerous that it's on the stock market and that they're selling it as a commodity. And we're moving in this direction where it's Canadians and the US and everywhere believes that you have to buy bottled water and that's the only way that you can get water, when it's not. You should have access to a well, you should have access to free drinking water 24/7 no matter what. Even if it doesn't matter what your income is, everybody has clean drinking water because we can't live with it. Nothing can. And so that's why it's so scary, and we really need to come together and push back to these companies stealing water, because we already know, like you mentioned Standing Rock before. My father is a chief Orville Looking Horse, and he's a spiritual leader of the Great Sioux Nation, and he was there at Standing Rock, and he got all those people there, and our people were there through it. My ancestors were the bones that were dug up for that pipeline to go through there. And I come from a long line of land defenders and water defenders since colonialism in the 1600s. That's what my people have always tried to protect the land from all of this consumption and capitalism. And that's what every single fight for the Indigenous peoples was always about, is saving the land and saving the water, because we know that we're equal to, or the water is not even equal to us. It's greater than us. Like, it gives life to the entire world. It gives life to everything. So water is way up here and is a grandmother at the highest respect and value. And it's in our creation stories, and it's in our traditional stories, and that's why water is so sacred to all Indigenous people, because we know that value of it. And same with land, and that's what every fight that we've ever had was ever about, was making sure that our land is clean and that we have future generations have a future. And it's really, like I said, that's what my Lakota side and Mohawk side has always fought about, and you can read on all of our fights that we ever had. And it's so when anyways, to get back to Nestle, what we did do was, when I found all that out, I had a community event, and I let my community know what was happening and what they wanted me to do, and that's what I organized. And so I also went to my traditional leadership and I let them know. The first protest that we had at the Nestle plant was in the winter time, and we got 500 people there and let them know that we didn't want them there, and that they needed to leave, because they didn't ask. So what Nestle's permit was, is they paid $500 a year. I mean, they paid the $500 to extract water for that entire year. And that's what their permit is. So they're making millions and millions and millions for the past 6 years. And they paid $500 a year for it. And they asked the federal government or I don't know, provincial federal government, and not the indigenous Haudenosaunee traditional government that we have at Six Nations. And so, and then the following summer is when we got the cease and desist. And this is what I'm reading here, and I'm next to our traditional leadership, our grandmothers. They're called clan mothers, and they're held higher than the chiefs, and they call the actions of what happens in our community. So we still have our traditional leadership, and this was the morning of having information session, and we had the kids from the Gawanio school to make posters, and that's what's hanging up at the bottom. This is the one in the winter where we blockaded at the driveway. And this was when I first met the Wellington Water Watchers, and where we had first started working together. And on the right is the morning of that action. We went and did a water ceremony before we did the action. And so here's the support letter from the Confederacy, our traditional Haudenosaunee Confederacy, to the youth. And so it says, the water is sacred to all creation. Water is sacred to our future generations. Water is life. Pursuant to the Haldeman Proclamation and the 1701 Nanfan Treaty, Nestle sits on Haudenosaunee territory upon which is carrying out illegal activity in removing aquifer water from our territory. We hold ancestral title to these lands, territories, and waters. We support the youth who are taking action to raise awareness and continue to take action and uphold our collective responsibility to protect the water. We are aware that Nestle is illegally taking 3.6 million liters of water a day from beneath our feet. There's a moratorium in place, yet Nestle continues to take our previous resource. The majority, 91% of our people at Six Nations do not have access to clean drinking water. Many without running water, they are forced to buy water, often from Nestle. This is a grave injustice to Six Nations. We will continue to support our youth in protecting our water. We continue to support ongoing actions of our youth who will be protesting against Nestle on June 8th. And I believe this was just a few other pictures. I'm going to exit this out, and I'm going to show the cease and desist letter. So this isn't the exact cease and desist letter, but it was the rough copy before it was made. So this one says, Nestle Well Site, 101 Brock Road, South Aberfoyle. Water is sacred to all creation. Water is sacred to our future generations. Water is life. We support the actions of our young people taking action. We are aware that your company is illegally taking 3.6 million liters of water per day. That was all basically the same thing in the other one, but it's saying, we as the Haudenosaunee Confederacy will continue to assert our rights as Indigenous peoples of this territory. We continue to assert our rights as who lived on these territories for countless generations. We will continue to rise up for our rights of our people, for the rights of the life within our lands, territories, and waters, and coming faces of our future generation. So maybe this isn't the cease and desist, but I couldn't find the original document. Oh, this is. I could not find the original document anyways, but it has something along these lines. But that is what we had, that's what we have did to try to stop Nestle, and I'm trying to get another cease and desist from our traditional council confederacy to make one for Blue Triton, because this has just happened, and is new and is a new fight, but we are still wanting all of that water that Nestle did take before for the 6 years. So there are precautions, or I'm not too sure exactly what they're called, but from the water that they did take. And with the Blue Triton, what we are demanding is that we have the cease and desist, so they cease from doing any kind of illegal activity that they're doing right now, which is stealing water from our aquifer. And we are also going to demand that plant and that water is handed over to Six Nations for us, and being able to have that well there, and our traditional leadership will decide exactly what they're going to do with it. But that's our action right now, is to have that land and that plant handed back to Six Nations. And so I'm going to be delivering that on this month on September 24th. We are going to me and the Wellington Water Watchers and other supporters are going to have an action at September 24th, and having those demands, since they have not listened, and they're not going to listen, since they haven't respected asking us permission in the first place, and they have not been in any kind of contact and moving in the direction of seizing and moving and stop taking our water. So we're in the same position. And I think it's really badass what you guys are doing over there in Mexico, and taking over the entire plant and making it your own, and having that safe space for your families and for your people. And it's really hard to get that ball rolling over here, but that would be the hope and the dream someday that would be able to happen over here. And we're moving in that direction. I'm just trying to get my community leaders to want to care enough to do that, I guess, and know that this is the only way that they're going to listen. They're not going to listen through any kind of paperwork, and acknowledging our treaties, because they haven't before. And they're not at your anywhere else in the entire world. They have never respected any kind of Indigenous treaties, and are continuing to completely disrespect any kind of Indigenous say, or disrespect the land and disrespect the water. So I think I hope that we can all move forward, and I know it's really scary, but it's what we have to do to protect our future generations, because climate change is real, and it is here, it's happening, and we all need to be alarmed, and we all need to be afraid, and we all need to be slightly not comfortable with this, because it's not comfortable, and it's really alarming what our future is looking like. And I think everybody needs to pay attention.
Thank you so much, Makasa, especially for that call to action, which I think is the motivation that we all need to wake up with in the morning and go to sleep with at night. So kind of drawing from what you said and that point that you ended on, referring back to Pueblos Unidos struggle, I wanted to hand the mic back over to Pueblos Unidos So I'll switch over to Spanish to pose some of the questions to them, and then we'll hand the mic over to them. Entonces voy a cambiar a español. Entonces, un poco llegando de lo que nos compartió Makasa sobre la inspiración.
Moving ahead from what Makasa was commenting about the struggles, one of the issues that they have, the people that has joined us, is that they have seen different stages of development. There are some struggles that have made protests in the bottling plants, installations, but the dream is to try to reach in a way to what you have done down there, to take the installations of a place to do the things that are really needed for the communities rather than what the enterprises are doing. And I want to hand over the microphone now with some of the questions that were provided by by the audience. Well, the question is, how did you take over the installations? And I would include on the larger scheme of or larger picture of the struggle, is how did you reach into this point, and how did this come? How did it solidify throughout the years, and how it became possible? If you could let us know on the larger sort of scope and view.
Bueno, quiero darle
Go
respuesta a
ahead,
su
friends. I would like to answer your question. Due to this has all been a big process throughout the organization, and an awareness raising and participation. What I mean with this is that when we experienced the damage that these enterprises were causing in our territories, we organized and we made available to see for other people to see how the capitalism and all of this was affecting our lands. And now we're taking all of this with philosophy and the way that we approach to water, and how we love, and how we hold our struggle with love to each other as well. And we're going to continue to harvest and to transmit as well, like to plant this ideology, this perspective over the respect on land and defense of life towards next generations. And we want to make them see how the governments and capitalism, government as the administrators of capitalism, they have been destroying our lands lately. And that's why we want to make everybody know that we won't stop in this struggle.
Muchas gracias, compañeras y compañeros. Aquí hay
Many thanks. We have another question from the audience. It's like, how did you occupy the installation of the Bonafont, and what is your inspiration for doing that, or your strategy as well? Beforehand, we called the 3 levels of government from Mexico, the local and the states and the national, and we never were taken into account. Our voice was not heard. So we looked into the article number 4 of the Constitution, and that's why we, based on our views and based on this article, we decided that 20 people we organized, and we articulated the different sufferings, so we could actually make an organization. We would like to know as well, please, what is the vision, and like what is ahead, what is happening now afterwards regarding this struggle. Our vision, friends, is to the defense of the territory. It's 29 years that we've been sacked. Our So we want now, what we want to do now is to want to make workshops for the people. We want to make like medical access for the people. We want to create cultural activities, dancing, and we want to teach as well how we see lives. Our space has we have been repressed throughout the years with this issue of the water, and that's why we take over the installations. We take this as a good for the communities, and everybody has to know that this space is for the communities. We are also making a radio, a communitary radio, to continue to communicate with all the people around and beyond what we are doing here. Um, we haven't been heard by previous governments. I don't know if you can come closer to the microphone. The communitary radio, it's going to be available for all the towns around, so we can have communication within the organizations and beyond in the country, and if we can in the worldwide, because it's very important to have the communication with all the organizations, the interested organizations and efforts. We are here to learn from all different experiences, and that's why the radio is so important, so we can continue growing. This is a gradual, slow process. Everything that we have done has been gradual, a slow process with a clear goal, and that has been the most important thing. That that clear sight and determination of reaching into a certain point, and the knowledge that the people, the communities are before any other enterprise. Our view, our life, it's first. That's why we are defending life, the earth, the air, the energy. Even our own energy is being taken by the governments and by the enterprises. And this is what we are defending as people, because we are all one. And when we defend one, we defend all the group. And that's why when we defend one, we defend everyone. And we have that certainty that this house, that house of the people, this house now, it's where we're going to be standing, and we're going to continue growing the the struggle, and we won't step back, because we are giving our life for this, and we're not going to be subjugated by the governments and by the enterprises, which only want to kill the life and to destroy life in this universe. This is where we get our strength, and so we're so determined that we are doing what is fair, and we are with all these ceremonies defending life, knowing that life, it's that what and purifies us and cleanses up, knowing that the four elements, that water, air, earth, and fire, we are ourselves. We cannot be turned down, we cannot be turned off, because we are all the same. We are part of this same life. That's why we want. That's what we want to communicate to all the world and tell all the organizations to rise and have certainty of what they're doing, because this is for the good of everyone. And with this certainty that we have, that's why we are with all these 20 people, knowing that we are doing this for life. We're not destroying, we're rather creating life. And that's what I can share, and to share to all organizations that viva Pueblos Unidos, viva all the organizations, all these organizations which are the original people, the First Nations, the indigenous people, which are all of us, and we should take ground with them. Many thanks for your inspiring words, that we are very moved by these words. We are, I'm going to change now to English.
So I just want to open up now's the time to kind of open up the discussion to all of the presenters. So I'll pose a question or two, and then if there are other questions from the audience, please feel free to share those in the chat box. So this is a question for Pueblos Unidos, for Don, for Makasa, for all of our presenters. What commonalities do you see between these sister struggles, and what possible points of collaboration do you see across borders? So I'd love to hear from all of our presenters if anyone wants to get started, and then we can pass the word on to others.
I yield to the other speakers. Would you like to go first?
Compas de Pueblos Unidos, ¿les gustaría empezar contestando esta pregunta? ¿De
Friends
qué
from Pueblos Unidos, would you like to answer this? What common themes do you see within different struggles, and what different possible collaborations can we have in defense of the water?
Well, I don't know if they're gonna talk. For us, I think the allies are super important in any kind of I guess action. Like the Wellington Water Watchers have been super supportive of our action, and I think that like allies can be super helpful to any kind of action and getting it moving, getting that support. Because like if it's just one person like I was, and then like I could not do it all by myself to get like a bus and to get posters and stuff like that really helped when we were doing our action, was to like call on the allies or ask these different organizations, or if they offered any help, don't be shy to take it, and to, because that's one of their responsibilities as even just a Canadian or a US, to any kind of treaties, to any kind of uh, I guess responsibility that their Canadian government or the government were supposed to be originally, was to help each other. And I think that's one of the greatest ways that we can ask or have or receive help, is from allies, and doing those kinds of things, because we're already Indigenous peoples, and most times are already stressed on trying to get clean water to their households with their families. They're already under a lot of stress in their daily lives, and those types of ways. And that's just some ways that you can take off the burden, is start spreading like their action on different sites, or doing anything that you can, or you want to start a GoFundMe for their action, then you can do that and get all of the proceeds go to that action. And if you want to really do anything that can help the indigenous action and fighting and keeping water, and just knowing that that water belongs to them, and their treaties is the first thing, learning that responsibility, um, and then trying to be as resourceful to them as possible. I think that is really, really helpful, and is one of the number one things. And that's another thing that I seen with Standing Rock. Like that was all of the allies that made that movement so huge. That there was thousands and thousands of people that showed up, like just to show up. They didn't have nothing. They just had themselves and just you as a body there supporting the action. That can go big, and putting it online, it can go big. So just using all of the resources, and even if it's just you showing up as an ally, as a non-Indigenous person, or if you're from anywhere, you can just help us whatever you can, and you can be um, one of the best ways to keep that action going and keep it alive, and um, because that action is what is right. That's my answer.
Thank you, Makasa. I'm going to speak in Spanish. Me gustaría, compas de Pueblos Unidos, si siguen con...
I would like to you, if people from Pueblos Unidos, just to hand the microphone to you to answer this same question that we just made to the presenters. Which issues or like themes do you see in common between these different struggles, and what possible collaborations do you see between the different struggles and these transnational frontier struggles? For us, it's very important to continue to articulate with these social networks, so we can reach, and if we could do a physical encounter at some point, so we can talk about these death projects, so we can talk about the pains and the sufferings that we are all having, and all this death that is coming on from the enterprises. Another one is to continue organizing from wherever we stand, so we can continue gather strength, and we can let everyone to know what we are doing, and other people can get like awareness about these struggles, because our struggle is not for another thing but for the greater life of everyone, the struggle for life that not everyone would just take in. And us as organized people in organized communities, and there's some other people that are not yet aware of what is happening in these circumstances and these territories, and our struggle is for life beyond. And regarding all the question about the organizations and how can we get together and work together, we are saying on the same way in different languages the same struggle, which is the water. And we have a common way to some degree, that we see water as part of our family, part of our lives, because we are all brothers and sisters in different shapes, in different countries, in different territories, but water, it's our sister, it's our grandmother. So that's why we all share a certain connection, a same connection with water, and an approach to this topic. And we are not wrong in this, because we have all these organizations, we share these principles, and we share this common perspective, and we are sharing also the common organization in which we do it through assemblies and through communication with other people, so they can come together and in awareness, so we can see that the international enterprises are the enemies and they are trying to they're trying to subjugate us and take away the water, this valuable resource. And this is what we share, and we have a common connection. And that's why we have in common as well that we do ceremonies, that we are grateful with water, that we do ceremonies to thank and to connect with it and with the universe. And spiritually we connect in a way. The water is part of this spirit. It is the spirit that provide us with life, and that's why we are able to love and what we love, and that's why we consider water sacred. And that's what I see common in many of the organizations that we are together, or all of the organizations that we're together. I would like to also say that we should stop consuming all the products that come from these enterprises. This is very important for us. Yes, all these enterprises are subjugating us by, and they are exercising their power by the consumption. If you can move the microphone, please, so you can hear. Yes, for me, another alternative is to not consume the products that are bringing us diseases, because all these processed foods, they should not be in our communities, because we have our own traditional food. And thanks to these products, this processed food, we have diseases, and they are bringing death to our communities. This is something very important for us.
Muchas gracias, compañeras. Aquí las personas en el público están compartiendo sus palabras. Dicen gracias por el gran trabajo y que viven los Pueblos Unidos.
They say, thanks for your great job. Thanks, Pueblos Unidos, for your action and organization for fighting for this important resource for all.
Would you like to comment on that same question, and then we'll pose another one or two questions to all of our panel speakers, and then we'll close the event out because I know it's getting late. Don, would you like to share anything on that same subject?
Yes, first, solidarity to everyone in the struggle. You know, there are so many parallels between all of our struggles. Makasa, I just wanted to let you know that Arvel has been in our territory, Arvel Looking Horse. He came here for the Healing Turtle Island ceremony in, I think it was 2018. But anyway, an aside is, it's, I think, very beneficial for us to all be in solidarity with one another, even though we may not have time to, you know, drop our own struggles to defend our own territories. You know, we can all learn from one another, and, you know, more outreach to one another would probably be really beneficial. And what is really important is, you know, amplifying each other, because Indigenous people are invisible oftentimes. I know here, you know, people across the world are not aware of what's going on with Penobscot Nation, but equally, people who are right here in Wabanaki You know, my next door neighbor probably doesn't even know what's going on with us and our struggle. But the more we share with one another, the more we share what works, I think that is what will be needed. And what we really need to remember is, as Pueblos Unidos mentioned, it is capitalism that is the enemy, not one another. And that when we unite in common struggle, that is when we will succeed.
Yes, speaking of uniting, I think that we should have a water activist coalition. So I like a group that we can communicate, because I believe that's what we all probably need. And I wonder, Mike, are you able to connect us all with email? I'm not exactly sure how that would work.
Yes, we can do that, Makasa.
But if we're able to keep in connection and help each other with, and maybe have have a group and have a meeting between us all, and I think that would be really helpful, because it would be better than working alone. Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I think that that's such a great idea. And I know Mike was speaking about an international event that Wellington Water Watchers is going to host. I know the folks from Pueblos Unidos spoke about an international kind of conference around water defense that they wanted to invite all of you to. So we'll definitely pull that together, because that's the whole point of us being here today. So I guess I'll just kind of close with one last round for all of our presenters. I think we touched on this a little bit, but I'm just wondering if there's any specific asks for folks who are, both members of these communities or Indigenous or non-Indigenous allies who are with us today. Are there any specific asks that people can do in solidarity with each of your movements right now? Whether it's sharing media, getting educated, donating, what can folks do today to act in solidarity with your movements?
Well, for ours, you can show up on September 24th at Aber 101 Aberfoyle, 101 Brock Road, Aberfoyle, probably at 12 o'clock at the Push Lynch Community Center. If anybody wants to join in on that. Also, if there's also, I have a show called Oneganos Let's Talk Water, and that's where I'm at right now. And you guys can go and watch on there, where we just finished, a few months ago, we finished our season 4. So there's about 20 episodes that are talking all in the theme of water and all about water, but they're not like directly at water. We have scientists, elders, activists, Quanah Chasing Horse, language people, people from the Amazon, Mari, great deal of people talking about water and talking about where they're from, and they're exactly like what's happening in Mexico, and different organizations like that, and other ones where they talk about like what they need also, and how you were able to help them in the different episodes. And some are about stars and astrology around waters. So they're really, and some about women in water, and just like different themes like that. So all of them are posted on our YouTube channel. You can just look up Oneganos Let's Talk Water, and all of the episodes are on there. I'm the host, and we have a whole deal of people, important people speaking on there. So if you want to learn any more about water, indigenous people, you can go there.
Thank you, Makasha. Going to switch over to Spanish. Compañeras y compañeros de Pueblos Unidos.
Friend from Pueblos Unidos, could you answer the same question so we can close the conversation? What can we do, the people inside of Mexico and outside of Mexico, to support and to your struggle in Puebla? The way that you could help us is by raising the voice through all this criminalization process that we are facing now. We've been beaten as well. On the October 30th, the state, when we were marching to stop the pipelines, we went marching. We were attacked by the National Guard and the police and the state police, and they beated us up. Also, the children were beaten up. We were sent gas and also gumballs, and we were rather hurt. And we would like if you could help us out by raising the voice through the different media that you can access and the different resources that you can reach. And we would like as well to reach other struggles in different areas in Africa and the South America and other regions as well, that we can join and create a network. We would like to mention that we have a big ground hole that was made, produced as well, probably by the industries, in a very, it's like a 120 meters of diameter of this hole that was made on the land due to the exploitation, especially of water, and some enterprises called mercators and other enterprises or surrounding enterprises that have been taking the water away from us. So we would like to know if you can denounce, if we can raise the voice. And that's why it's so important that others can raise these issues. We've been harassed by the government, by the National Guard, and by other forces constantly, and they constantly come. They take photos of us. We go walking, even they take photos of the children and other vulnerable groups. Every 5 minutes, we see a lot of police officers, like judicial police officers, and they take photos of us. Also, the electricity companies, they're trying to come, cutting the light, cutting the energy. We are denouncing as well why us, the children, and us, we're constantly being marginalized. That's why we blame on the federal government and the president of Mexico and Miguel Barbosa Huerta, which is the governor from this state of Puebla. We denounce you for all this harassment that we are being suffering every day by these forces. Whatever will happen to us, we denounce. We denounce, and we would like you to as well to raise the voice wherever you can for us to be safe. And whatever happens, these people are to blame. They all know where we live, and we are being followed also by these police officers and other people that we don't know exactly who they are. We're being followed by big trucks that are bulletproof, and they follow us into our houses. But we are not afraid. But we are not afraid of this. What we are defending, it's a right. It's the right to life and the right to our towns, for our communities. And so we are not afraid of these people. And that's what we can add at this point.
Muchas gracias. Thank you. To close us out, Don, would you like to add something? And I guess I'll just kind of close out responding to Pueblos Unidos by saying that I think it's really a moment in which international solidarity and connection is going to be very helpful for Pueblos Unidos. They're experiencing a lot of criminalization. They're experiencing lawsuits criminalizing particularly prominent members of their movement. They're experiencing government surveillance. As they mentioned, the different agencies are trying to assault their occupied space. So I think forming these networks to amplify their voices and be attentive to what's happening to them and denounce it is very important now. So I'll hand the mic over to Don to finish responding to that question before we close out.
A la gente de Pueblos Unidos, quiero decir
To all the people
solidaridad
in Pueblos
en la
Unidos,
lucha
solidarity on this
siempre.
struggle forever.
It's very disturbing to hear what they're doing to you, but know that you're not alone. You know, I can't say anything better than what Makasa and La Gente de Pueblos Unidos has said, but I can offer a prayer in the Penobscot language, if that would be welcome. Kachinuesk, Danawamane, Adamane Mamakia, Wachia Nebawil, Sapale Bruliaduli. Great Spirit, watch over us. Guide us through our pains and sorrows, and never let us fear this life on earth. Tahoe and Del Navamuk, all our relations.
Yeah, I think I can add and invite the Mexico, I don't know how to pronounce that, the name. Pueblos, to be on the Let's Talk Water show in our next upcoming season of season 5, so we can get your action out. And yeah, I'll probably be in contact with you through email. Hopefully you get it and that we're able to organize later in the coming months. I'm not exactly sure when. I don't have the exact timeline, but hopefully in the next season 5, invite you so we are able to help each other out, because we've been through and fighting the same kind of fight, and we've had the army at our door and pointing guns and machine guns at our heads and at our women and children too. And so we have been through the same struggle that you're going through, and I think we can really help each other out and communicating that way. So hopefully we can get that running, and I can reach out to you.
Thank you, everybody, for today. I'm going to just suggest a couple of immediate actions, and other people, I see Nikki's put something in the box, and others may want to do something similar. I'm going to ask again if you want to make a donation to Pueblos Unidos. You can do this through the link. I've noticed online that more than $300 US has been donated already. Thank you very much for those of you who have donated. We'll connect perhaps with Pueblos Unidos through Sam, and we'll find out who we can send direct messages to in Mexico through our respective embassies, etc., to draw attention and provide support and object to the way you're being treated, and to provide support to you assert your rights. I just wanted to mention during the course of this meeting, Skylar Williams, who's a land defender with 6 Nations, and Mayak Manuel, who's a land defender out on the West Coast, have been arrested, even just during the course of this meeting. And particularly with Skylar Williams, I'm putting a link in the box right now where you can get information, where you can make a phone call right to the police station and demand that Skylar be released. And at that Facebook link, you'll find information on what's happened today. In terms of ongoing connections, the Water Watchers holds an annual conference called the People's Water Convention. It's a virtual convention. It'll be October 16th this year. Part of it brought attention to struggles to protect water, and it does have an international dimension. And we're in conversation with people in Turkey and Iran who are opposing Nestle's water bottling there. We expect that there'll be a workshop there. And there is a set of workshops that focus on Indigenous people's water struggles as part of the campaign or part of the convention. So we'll send that information out to you as well. I just want to conclude with thank yous. First of all, Sam, thank you for your terrific job in moderating tonight, and also for all the background liaison work you did to bring us together with Pueblos Unidos. Thank you to Danny Lindemood and Megan Clout, who are off screen in the back room providing all the tech support. Thank you to Pablo and Juan for the live translation you provided today. That was very special. We appreciate it. And finally, thank you to our audience for being here today. Most of you have hung in for the whole period of time. And then last, it's been very special. We appreciate very much Makasa, Dawn, and the people of Pueblos Unidos for being here today, for sharing your struggles. We know there's a cost to that labor for you to do that, and we appreciate it very much. We want to act in solidarity. Thank you, Nikki Sakara, for connecting us, for being a terrific ally, and for connecting us with Dawn so we could be here today. We're going to leave the chat box open for a few minutes. If you have if as a member of the audience, you have last comments you'd like to share, please do that. We're going to show the video one more time as we exit. We will stay in touch, and we will continue to act in solidarity. Water is life. Water's for life, not profit. Indigenous peoples are the first peoples, and we need to act in solidarity with them to support their human rights and to support their land and treaty claims, and to find another way to live together with the earth, with Mother Earth and all her abundant beauty. Thank you, everybody. We're going to go to the video now, and I'm going to say goodbye, and we're going to leave the chat box open so people can close their comments or say goodbye to each other or provide thanks and gratitude for today's time together. Thank you.